Yet what if I told you that your addiction is not a curse, but a language, a secret way in which God speaks to his chosen ones? Carl Jung made a discovery so shocking that religion could never accept it. Addiction is not simply human weakness. It is the whisper of a higher force, trying to awaken something buried deep within the soul. You see, while most people see addiction as punishment, Jung understood it as a spiritual dialogue. The endless craving, the obsession, the guilt, the cycle of falling and rising again, none of it is random. It is how God communicates with those he intends to transform. Every addiction carries a message, a hidden code meant only for those strong enough to face it. Alcohol, lust, control, ambition, pain, they are not accidents. They are symbols of hunger, pointing to what your soul has forgotten. And only those marked by divine purpose experience this inner fire so intensely. Do you ever feel trapped by your own desires, yet unable to let them go? That paradox is the proof, because Jung found that the more you fight what you crave, the further you move from what it's trying to teach you. Addiction is not here to destroy you, it's here to reveal you. God speaks through the storm of your compulsions, through the urges you don't understand. He speaks in the silence after every fall, when you can't recognize yourself anymore, because that's the moment he begins to reshape you. So before you condemn your addiction, listen. It may be the most personal conversation you've ever had with God, one that can only be heard by souls chosen to awaken. There is a hunger inside you that nothing seems to satisfy. You try to fill it with substances, with people, with achievements, with distractions. But no matter how much you consume, the emptiness returns, stronger, deeper, more demanding than before. Jung called this the spiritual thirst. He believed that every addiction begins as a search for something sacred, something lost. When you reach for that drink, that substance, that forbidden pleasure, you are not simply being weak. You are responding to a call you do not yet understand. Your soul is screaming for meaning, and addiction is the only language it knows how to speak. This thirst is ancient. It has been with humanity since the beginning, but not everyone feels it with the same intensity. Only certain souls carry this burden, this relentless craving that refuses to be ignored. These are the ones Jung identified as chosen, marked by a divine restlessness that will not let them settle for ordinary life. You see, most people can drink without becoming addicted. Most people can experience pleasure without losing themselves to it. But you cannot. And that is not your weakness. That is your sign. The thirst that cannot be quenched is proof that something greater is trying to reach you, trying to pull you toward a transformation you keep resisting. Jung discovered that alcoholics in particular carried a unique spiritual wound. He saw that their addiction was not about the alcohol itself. It was about the desperate attempt to touch something transcendent, something beyond the mundane reality that felt too small for their souls. They drank to feel connected, to feel alive, to feel anything other than the suffocating emptiness of a world without magic. But here is the twist. The addiction itself becomes the barrier. The very thing you use to satisfy your thirst becomes the thing that keeps you thirsty. You drink to feel whole, but the drinking fractures you further. You chase the high to escape the pain, but the high deepens the pain. It is a paradox, a cruel cycle that seems designed to break you. Yet Jung insisted this was intentional. This cycle is not random chaos. It is a divine mechanism, a spiritual test designed specifically for those strong enough to endure it. God does not speak to everyone through addiction because not everyone needs this particular lesson. But for those who do, the message is always the same. What you seek outside yourself can only be found within. The thirst you feel is real, but you have been looking in the wrong direction. You have been trying to satisfy a spiritual need with material solutions. You have been trying to fill a God-shaped hole with things that can never fit. And every time you try, the hole grows larger, the thirst grows stronger, and you feel more lost than before. This is where most people give up. They see the endless cycle and conclude they are broken, cursed, unworthy. But Jung saw something different. He saw that the intensity of your craving is proportional to the depth of your calling. The more you suffer, the greater your potential for awakening. The thirst that cannot be quenched is not your punishment. It is your preparation. God speaks to his chosen ones through this impossible hunger, because only through it can they learn the most important truth. Nothing in this world will ever be enough. Not success, not love, not power, not pleasure, nothing. And once you truly understand this, once you stop fighting it and start listening to it, the thirst begins to transform. It stops being about filling yourself and starts being about emptying yourself. It stops being about escape and starts being about encounter. The craving that once drove you to destruction becomes the doorway to something you never imagined possible, a direct connection to the divine source that has been calling you all along. But you cannot reach this point while you are still fighting. You cannot hear the message while you are still drowning in guilt and shame. You must first accept that your addiction is not your enemy. It is your teacher, your guide, the thorn in your flesh that will not let you rest until you finally turn inward and face what you have been running from. The thirst will never be quenched by anything outside you. That is the brutal truth Jung understood. But here is the hope. It was never meant to be. The thirst is the call. The craving is the invitation. And your addiction is the only thing powerful enough to force you to finally answer. You have tried to quit 1,000 times. You have promised yourself, promised others, maybe even promised God that this time would be different. And yet you fell again, and again, and again. Each relapse feels like proof of your failure, evidence that you are too weak, too broken, too far gone to ever be saved. But what if falling is not the opposite of rising? What if every collapse is actually a step forward in a journey you do not yet understand? Jung believed that the repeated cycle of addiction and relapse was not a sign of failure, but a necessary descent into the parts of yourself you have spent your whole life avoiding. He called it the encounter with the shadow. This is the dark side of your personality, the aspects of yourself you reject, deny, and bury deep beneath the surface. Your anger, your shame, your fear, your hidden desires, everything you pretend does not exist. But addiction has a way of dragging all of it into the light. Every time you fall, you are forced to confront something true about yourself, something you would never face if life were comfortable. The addict cannot hide behind social masks or polite pretenses. The addiction strips away all the layers, all the defenses, until you are standing naked before yourself and before God. And that is precisely the point. Most people go through life never truly knowing themselves. They build identities based on what others expect, what society approves, what feels safe. But the chosen ones, the ones marked by addiction, do not have that luxury. They are forced into the depths whether they want to go or not, and every fall takes them deeper. Jung understood that this descent is sacred. In ancient myths and spiritual traditions, the hero always has to descend into the underworld before they can ascend to the heavens. They have to face the monsters, the demons, the parts of themselves they fear most. Only then can they claim their true power. Only then can they be reborn. Your addiction is your underworld. Every relapse is another layer peeled away, another illusion shattered, another false self destroyed. It feels like death because in a way it is. But death is not the end. It is the beginning of transformation, and God speaks most clearly in the places where you feel most lost. You see, the falling is not random. It follows a pattern, a rhythm that Jung recognized as deeply spiritual. You rise with hope, you fall with despair, you rise again with determination, you fall again with guilt. over and over, and each cycle teaches you something essential. You cannot save yourself through willpower alone. You cannot overcome this through discipline or control or sheer determination. This is the hardest lesson for the chosen ones to learn, because most of you are fighters. You are strong, capable, used to conquering obstacles through force of will. But addiction does not respond to force. The harder you fight it, the stronger it becomes. The more you resist it, the tighter its grip. And so you must learn to stop fighting and start surrendering. Surrender does not mean giving up. It means recognizing that you are facing something more powerful than your ego, something that requires a different kind of strength. It means admitting that you need help, that you cannot do this alone, that the path forward is not up but down. Further into the darkness, further into the unknown, further into the parts of yourself you have spent your whole life running from. Jung found that those who eventually break free from addiction do not do so by conquering it. They do so by integrating it. They stop seeing their shadow as the enemy and start seeing it as a part of themselves that needs to be understood, accepted, and transformed. They stop fighting the fall and start learning from it. Each time you collapse, you are being given a gift, a chance to see yourself more clearly, a chance to understand why you crave what you crave, why you run from what you run from, why you hurt in the ways you hurt. And with each fall, if you are willing to look, you come closer to the truth that will set you free. The path is not a straight line upward. It is a spiral downward and then upward, again and again, until you finally reach the center. And at the center, you will find what you have been searching for all along, not in the substance, not in the high, not in the escape, but in the person you become through the journey of falling and rising, breaking and healing, dying and being reborn. There is a part of you that watches from the corner of your mind. It knows every secret you keep, every lie you tell yourself, every moment of weakness you pretend never happened. This is not your conscience. This is something older, something deeper. Jung called it the shadow, and it has been with you since birth, growing stronger with every truth you refuse to face. Your addiction feeds on this shadow. It thrives in the darkness of everything you deny about yourself, the rage you swallow, the pain you ignore, The desires you label as shameful, all of it gets pushed down into this hidden place, and there it waits, gaining power, until one day it erupts in ways you cannot control. You think your addiction is about weakness, but Jung saw it differently. He understood that addiction is the shadow's way of forcing itself into your awareness. It is not trying to destroy you. It is trying to be seen, to be heard, to be acknowledged. Because what you refuse to face in the light will eventually consume you in the dark. Every craving carries a message from your shadow. When you reach for that drink, that drug, that destructive behavior, you are not simply seeking pleasure or escape. You are responding to a part of yourself that has been silenced for too long, a part that holds truths you are terrified to admit, a part that knows exactly who you are beneath all the masks you wear. Most people spend their entire lives running from their shadow. They build comfortable lives, surround themselves with distractions, and never look too closely at the darkness within. But God does not choose those people for this particular journey. He chooses the ones who cannot run, the ones whose shadows refuse to stay hidden, the ones whose inner darkness becomes so loud it drowns out everything else. This is why your addiction feels so powerful, so overwhelming, so impossible to resist. It's not just a habit or a chemical dependency. It is your shadow demanding recognition. And the more you fight it, the more you judge it, the more you hate yourself for it, the stronger it becomes. Because shadows grow in proportion to the light you try to force upon them. Jung discovered something revolutionary. You cannot kill your shadow. You cannot pray it away, discipline it away, or shame it away. The only way forward is through integration. You must turn toward the darkness, look it in the face and say its name. You must acknowledge the parts of yourself you have spent years denying, the anger, the selfishness, the fear, the weakness, the hunger for things you were taught to reject. This is terrifying work. It requires a kind of courage most people will never need, because when you finally look at your shadow, you see everything you have been taught to despise. You see the monster you were convinced you could never be. You see the truth that society, family, religion all told you to hide. And in that moment, you have a choice. Reject it again and sink deeper into addiction, or accept it and begin the process of transformation. The chosen ones are given this burden because they have the capacity to bear it. God knows that not everyone can face their shadow and survive. Not everyone can stare into their own darkness without being consumed by it. But those marked by addiction have no choice. Their shadow will not let them rest. It will keep pushing, keep demanding, keep destroying everything they build until they finally stop running and turn around. When you do, something unexpected happens. The shadow does not destroy you. Instead, it reveals gifts you never knew you had. Hidden within your darkness are strengths you suppressed, talents you ignored, truths you were afraid to speak. Your shadow knows who you really are, stripped of all pretense and social conditioning. And once you integrate it, once you accept it as part of yourself, the addiction begins to lose its power. Because addiction only has control when you are divided against yourself, when part of you wants to stop and another part cannot. When your conscious mind says no, but your shadow says yes. This internal war is exhausting, and the addiction feeds on that exhaustion. But when you finally make peace with your shadow, when you stop fighting yourself and start understanding yourself, the war ends. Jung believed that this integration was the true goal of spiritual development. Not perfection, not purity, not becoming some idealized version of yourself, but wholeness, becoming complete by accepting all parts of yourself, light and dark, good and bad, noble and shameful. This is what it means to be truly human. This is what God is trying to teach His chosen ones through the brutal classroom of addiction. Your shadow knows your name because it is you, the real you, the complete you, not the version you show the world, but the version that exists beneath all the layers of conditioning and fear. And until you acknowledge it, until you speak its name out loud and claim it as your own, you will never be free. The addiction will continue because the shadow will continue demanding to be seen. But once you do this work, once you face what you have been running from, something miraculous happens. The craving that once controlled you becomes a compass pointing toward your hidden self. The addiction that once destroyed you becomes the catalyst for your greatest transformation. And the shadow that once terrified you becomes your most trusted guide into the depths of your own soul. The bottle promises peace, but delivers chaos. The substance offers freedom, but brings chains. The behavior guarantees pleasure, but produces pain. This is the great deception of addiction, and Jung understood it completely. What you crave is never what you actually need. You already know this. Every time you give in to the craving, there is a moment of relief, maybe even joy, but it never lasts. Within hours, sometimes minutes, the emptiness returns. Deeper than before, hungrier than before. And you find yourself right back where you started, except now you carry the additional weight of guilt and shame. This cycle is not an accident, it is a design. Because the craving is not about the substance or the behavior at all. It is about something missing inside you, something that has been absent for so long you have forgotten what it feels like. Jung called this the God-shaped void, and he believed that every addiction is ultimately a